Woo-jin didn't sleep for the next 72 hours. He couldn't afford to. Every moment wasted was another moment Hana remained trapped. Another moment Choi could make a move. Another moment the situation could spiral beyond his control. His office had become a war room. Maps of Seoul covered one wall, marked with territories, neutral zones, and points of conflict. Multiple screens displayed surveillance feeds, financial data, and communication intercepts. Min Seo coordinated teams across the city while Woo-jin made calls, pulled favors, and assembled the pieces of a plan that had to work perfectly or not at all. "We've traced Choi's hospital hackers," Min Seo reported. "2 college students he's paying to cause problems. They're using a coffee shop in Hongdae as their base. We can grab them, but that might escalate things." "Don't grab them yet. I want Choi to think his pressure is working. Keep him confident." Woo-jin studied the financial records spread across his desk. What about his legitimate businesses? 3 restaurants, 2 norebangs, 1 taxi company. The taxi company is his main money laundering operation. If we could disrupt that, no, hitting his businesses means open war. We need something more subtle. Woo-jin leaned back, thinking, Choi wants my gangbuk territories. What if I gave them to him? "Boss, those territories generate 40 million won a month. You're not seriously considering not giving them permanently. But what if I made him think I was? Set up a meeting to negotiate terms. Make him believe he's won. And then? And then we use his overconfidence against him." Woo-jin pulled up files on his computer. Choi's operation runs on razor-thin margins. He's overextended, trying to maintain territory he can't actually afford to control. If I publicly appear to cave to give him what he wants, his rivals will see weakness. They'll move on his other territories. Min Seo's eyes widened. "You're going to let him win, so his own people destroy him." "Exactly. Once his organization starts crumbling from internal pressure, I'll make him a different offer. I'll help stabilize his situation in exchange for him leaving Hana alone permanently. He keeps some face, avoids total destruction, and I get what I actually want." That's manipulative and brilliant. That's strategy. The best victories are the ones where your enemy chooses to lose. Woo-jin made a series of calls over the next hour, carefully planting information through channels he knew would reach Choi. Rumors that Woo-jin was tired of the conflict, that protecting some waitress wasn't worth losing territory, that he might be open to negotiation. By evening, Choi had taken the bait. A message came through intermediaries. He was willing to meet, discuss terms, see if they could reach an arrangement. "Meeting location?" Min Seo asked. "Neutral ground. Somewhere public enough that neither side can pull anything obvious. The Shilla Hotel, maybe. Business lounge." "When?" "Tomorrow afternoon. I want this finished before Hana's 3-day deadline expires." That night, Woo-jin allowed himself a brief break from planning to call Hana. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with stress. "It's been 2 days, one more and I'm taking matters into my own hands." "I know. I'm meeting with Choi tomorrow. This should be over soon." "Meeting with him?" "Woo-jin, that's dangerous." "It's necessary, and it's what you wanted. Resolution as fast as possible. I didn't want you getting hurt." Something in her tone made Woo-jin pause. "Concern? For him?" "I've been doing this for a long time, Hana. I know how to handle men like Choi." "Do you? Because from what I can tell, this whole situation exists because you showed a vulnerability. He's seen that I matter to you, and he's exploiting it. What if he tries something during the meeting? Then I'll handle it. But I don't think he will. Choi's smart enough to know that killing me would bring down heat he can't survive. He wants a deal, not a war." "And what kind of deal are you making?" Woo-jin hesitated. He didn't want to lie to her, but explaining the full complexity of his plan seemed unwise. "A deal that gets him off your back permanently. The details don't matter." "The details always matter. What are you giving him?" "Territory, resources, things I can afford to lose." "But you're not actually giving them to him, are you? You're playing some kind of game where you manipulate him into thinking he's won while actually setting him up for something else. Her perceptiveness shouldn't have surprised him, but it did. How did you... Because that's what you do. You think several moves ahead, manipulate situations to your advantage. It's why you're successful at what you do. She paused. Just be careful. The smartest plans can still go wrong. I'll be careful, I promise. And Woo-jin? After this is over, after I'm safe and my grandmother is safe and Choi is no longer a threat, we need to have a serious conversation about what this arrangement between us actually is. What do you mean? I mean that I've accepted your help because I had no choice, but that doesn't mean I'm comfortable with being someone you protect. I need my independence back. I need to know that I can live my own life without constant surveillance and interference. Of course, once you're safe, you can have whatever level of independence you want. Can I? Or will there always be another threat, another reason why you need to keep me under protection? When does this end? It was a fair question, one Woo-jin didn't have a good answer for. In his world, threats never really ended. You dealt with one enemy, and another emerged. Safety was temporary, a brief respite between conflicts. But Hana didn't live in his world. She shouldn't have to accept its rules. It ends when you want it to end, he said finally. After Choi is handled, if you want me completely out of your life, I'll respect that. No. More surveillance, no more interference, no more anything. You'll be free. Do you mean that? Yes. Even though you've spent 8 years building toward this? Even though repaying your debt is important to you? Even though. Your freedom is more important than my debt. She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know if I believe you, but I want to. Then let me prove it. Give me one more day to finish this, and then we'll figure out what comes next together. Not me deciding for you, but both of us making informed choices. Okay, one more day, but Woo-jin, if you get yourself killed trying to protect me, I'll never forgive you. After the call ended, Woo-jin sat in the darkness of his office, thinking about Hana's words. If you get yourself killed trying to protect me, I'll never forgive you. It was the most personal thing she'd said to him, a statement that implied she cared about his survival as more than just her protector. That she might actually be starting to see him as a person rather than just a dangerous benefactor. The thought warmed something in his chest that had been cold for a very long time. The Shilla Hotel's business lounge was exactly what Woo-jin had hoped for. Public enough to feel safe, private enough for serious conversation, upscale enough that both parties would be on their best behavior. He arrived early, securing a corner table with clear sightlines to all entrances. Sung-ho and 2 others sat at nearby tables, looking like businessmen having coffee. Invisible, unless you knew what to look for. Woo-jin had also arranged for hotel security to be briefed about a potential business dispute, ensuring they'd respond quickly if needed. Choi arrived precisely on time, accompanied by his Lieutenant Park and 1 other man. They approached the table, and for a moment the 2 leaders sized each other up. Choi was older, harder, his face a map of violence survived. Woo-jin was younger but no less dangerous, his control running deeper. Woo-jin! Choi sat without waiting for an invitation. I appreciate you agreeing to meet. Choi, let's skip the pleasantries and discuss terms. Direct. I like that. Choi leaned back, confidence radiating from him. My terms are simple. You return the 3 gangbook districts you took from me 5 years ago. In exchange, I forget the girl exists. She lives her life. You live yours. We never speak of this again. And if I refuse? Then the pressure continues. Computer problems at hospitals, scheduling conflicts, administrative nightmares. Nothing directly harmful, but constant and exhausting. Eventually, either you give in or the girl breaks from the stress. Either outcome works for me. Woo-jin let silence stretch between them, appearing to consider. In truth, he'd already made his decision. The territories are worth approximately 40 million won a month. You're asking me to give up nearly $500 million a year for one person's safety. I'm asking you to pay the price for showing weakness. You should have known better than to develop attachments in our line of work. Perhaps, but attachments aren't weaknesses. They're what separate us from animals. Woo-jin pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Here are the transfer documents, the 3 districts, all associated operations, and complete access to existing infrastructure. You win, Choi. Congratulations. Choi's eyes widened slightly. He'd expected more negotiation, more resistance. The fact that Woo-jin was caving so completely should have been suspicious, but greed often overrode caution. You're serious? You're just giving them to me? I'm making a strategic choice. The territories aren't worth Hana's safety. Simple calculation. Choi flipped through the documents, scanning details. Everything appeared legitimate: detailed transfer agreements, access codes, contact information for key personnel. It looked exactly like what it was supposed to be. A complete handover. There has to be a catch. No catch, you apply pressure, I respond by giving you what you want. That's how negotiations work. Woo-jin stood. The transfers will be complete within 48 hours. In exchange, you leave Hana alone, completely. If I hear you've gone near her, looked at her, thought about her, the deal is void. Understood. Pleasure doing business with you, Woo-jin. After Choi left, Sung-ho approached the table. He bought it? Completely. His greed made him blind to the obvious trap. Woo-jin gathered his things. Now we wait. By tomorrow morning, everyone in Seoul's underworld will know I gave up territory to protect someone. Choi's rivals will smell blood in the water. And when they move on his other districts, we offer him a lifeline, protection in exchange for a permanent peace agreement regarding Hana. He'll be so desperate by then, he'll agree to anything. What if he doesn't fall for the secondary plan? Then we go to Plan B, which is significantly less elegant and more violent. But I'm betting on his survival instincts. Men like Choi always choose survival over pride when pushed hard enough. Woo-jin returned to his office and made one call to a rival boss named Hwang, who'd been looking for an opportunity to expand his own territory. The conversation was brief, carefully worded, planting seeds of information about Choi's apparent new weakness. I'm telling you this as a courtesy, Woo-jin said. Choi just took 3 districts from me because I was distracted by personal matters. He's overextended now, trying to control more territory than he has resources to manage. Thought you might find that information useful. Hwang's interest was immediate. How overextended? Enough that someone ambitious could probably carve off a piece without too much resistance. But that's just speculation. Do with the information what you will. After ending the call, Woo-jin allowed himself a small smile. The dominoes were falling. By morning, Choi would face pressure from 3 different directions. Within 2 days, his organization would be in chaos. And then Woo-jin would swoop in, offer stability in exchange for peace, and get exactly what he actually wanted. It was manipulative, ruthless, and morally questionable. But it would work. And more importantly, it would keep Hana safe without requiring the kind of violence she'd asked him to avoid. He called her with an update. It's done. I met with Choi, made arrangements. You should be safe to leave the apartment by tomorrow evening. What kind of arrangements? The kind that give him what he thinks he wants while setting up consequences he didn't anticipate. Trust me, it'll work. You keep asking me to trust you. You realize how hard that is, right? I do, but I'm hoping that eventually, actions will prove what words can't. We'll see. That night, Woo-jin finally allowed himself to sleep for a few hours. His phone on loud in case anything went wrong, but nothing did. The plan was working exactly as designed. By morning, word had spread through Seoul's underworld. Woo-jin had given up territory to protect someone. The Viper of Gangnam had shown weakness, and like sharks sensing blood, Rivals began circling. Choi's first panic call came at 11 a.m. What did you do? Choi's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. Hwang just hit one of my warehouses. Kim's people are moving on my protection routes. Everything's falling apart. Woo-jin, sitting calmly in his office with Min-seo taking notes, let silence stretch before responding. I didn't do anything, Choi. You took territory you couldn't afford to defend and your rivals noticed. That's not my problem. You told them. You made me look weak. I simply mentioned to a few people that you'd successfully pressured me into giving up districts. How they interpreted that information isn't my responsibility. Congratulations on your victory, by the way. I'm sure the 3 new territories will be very rewarding once you figure out how to keep them. You bastard. This was your plan all along. My plan was to get you off Hana's back. Mission accomplished. What happens to your organization now is entirely your own concern. I'll tell everyone the deal was fake, that you manipulated. Tell them what? That you fell for an obvious trap? That you took territory you couldn't hold? That you're now losing ground on 3 fronts because you overextended? I'm sure that will help your reputation tremendously. Choi was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, the rage had been replaced by calculation. What do you want? Now we're having a productive conversation. Here's what I want. You leave Hana alone, permanently. You never look at her, never think about her, never use her as leverage against me. In exchange, I'll help stabilize your situation. Help how? I'll make it known that you and I have reached an understanding, that attacking your territories means attacking mine by extension. That will stop most of the immediate pressure. I'll also return the 3 gangbuk districts to you once you've proven you can manage them without overextending. And what do you get out of this? Peace of mind, the knowledge that Hana can live her life without worrying about you. That's all I want, Choi. It's what I wanted from the beginning. You could have just asked. Men like you don't respond to asking. You respond to demonstrations of power. Consider yourself demonstrated upon. Another long pause. Fine, the girl is off limits. Permanently. We never speak of her again. Now help me before Hwang takes everything I've built. Already making calls. Expect the pressure to ease by tonight. But Choi, if you ever come near Hana again, if you ever think about using her against me, I won't be so elegant in my response. We clear? Crystal. After ending the call, Woo-jin allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The plan had worked. Choi was neutralized, Hana was safe, and he'd accomplished it without the mass violence she'd been afraid of. Min-seo was grinning. That was masterful, cold, manipulative, and morally questionable, but masterful. I prefer to think of it as strategic problem solving. Does Hana know how ruthless you can be when properly motivated? She's starting to figure it out. Question is whether that knowledge makes her more or less likely to accept my help long term. My money's on more. She strikes me as someone who values competence and results over moral purity. Woo-jin wasn't so sure. Hana had agreed to his help out of desperation, not genuine acceptance. Once the immediate threat was resolved, would she want anything to do with him? Or would she take her freedom and run as far from his world as possible? Only one way to find out. He called her. It's over. Choi has agreed to leave you alone permanently. You're free to leave the apartment, go back to your normal life. Just like that? After all this, it's just over? Just like that. I told you I'd handle it. What did you do? What did handling it actually involve? I made him understand that pursuing you was more expensive than backing off. The specifics don't matter. What matters is you're safe now. The specifics always matter, Woo-jin, but I'm too tired to fight about it right now. Can I see my grandmother? Yes. I'll have a car pick you up in an hour. Full security detail until we're certain Choi is keeping his word. But after a few days, even that can be scaled back if you want. I want it. I want everything back to normal. Then that's what you'll get. Hana? Yes? I meant what I said. After this, if you want me out of your life, I'll go. No more surveillance, no more interference. You'll be free to make your own choices." She was quiet for a moment. "We'll talk about that after I've had time to process everything. Right now, I just want to see my grandmother and sleep in my own bed." After hanging up, Woo-jin stood and walked to his window, looking out on at Seoul. The crisis was over. Hana was safe. He'd accomplished what he'd set out to do. So why did he feel like he was about to lose something important? The reunion with her grandmother was everything Hana needed. She walked into the hospital room, saw the old woman sitting up in bed watching a drama on the small television, and felt tears spring immediately to her eyes. "Halmione." Her grandmother looked up, and her weathered face broke into a smile. "Hanaya, finally! I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about me." Hana rushed to the bed and wrapped her arms around her grandmother, breathing in the familiar scent of the hospital soap mixed with the herbal tea the nurses let her keep by her bedside. For several minutes, they just held each other, not speaking, just being together. "You've lost weight," her grandmother said when they finally separated, her hands cupping Hana's face critically. "And you look exhausted. What's been happening? The truth this time." Hana sat in the chair beside the bed, still holding her grandmother's hand. "It's complicated, and parts of it I can't explain because I don't fully understand them myself. But the short version is that someone has been helping us. Someone powerful who paid your hospital bills and made sure we're both safe." "Someone powerful. That usually means someone dangerous." "Yes. And this dangerous person, why are they helping us?" "Because I helped him once, a long time ago, and he's been trying to repay that debt." Her grandmother studied her with those sharp eyes that had seen too much of life to be easily fooled. "This person, they're more than just someone repaying a debt, aren't they? I can see it in your face when you talk about them." "I don't know what they are. A benefactor? A protector? Someone whose world I accidentally stumbled into and can't quite escape?" Hana shook her head. "I'm trying to figure that out." "Do you trust them?" "I don't know. They've done everything they said they would. They've kept me safe, kept you safe, solved problems I couldn't solve on my own. But they're also someone who operates outside the law, who uses manipulation and force to get what they want. How do you trust someone like that? The same way you trust anyone. You watch their actions over time and see if they match their words. You observe how they treat people when there's nothing to gain. You notice whether they become more or less themselves when challenged." Her grandmother squeezed her hand, "And you ask yourself if your life is better or worse for knowing them." "Is my life better? I don't know yet. It's definitely more complicated." Complicated isn't always bad. Sometimes complicated means interesting. Sometimes it means growing in ways you didn't expect. They talked for another hour, about small things mostly. The hospital food, which drama the nurses recommended, how the physical therapy was going. Normal conversation that felt like medicine after days of stress and fear. When Hana finally left the hospital, Sung-ho was waiting in the lobby with a car. The promised security detail, but he kept a respectful distance, letting her have the illusion of freedom even if the reality was more constrained. "Where to, Miss Yoon? Your apartment or the safe house?" "My apartment. My actual apartment with the water-stained ceiling and the rattling windows. I need to see my own things, sleep in my own bed." "Understood. We'll do a security sweep first, make sure everything's clear, then give you privacy." The drive through Seoul felt surreal. She'd been gone less than a week, but everything felt different somehow. The same streets, the same buildings, but viewed through new eyes that had seen things she couldn't unsee. Her rooftop room was exactly as she'd left it. Slightly messy, slightly cramped, perfectly hers. Sung-ho and another man checked every corner, tested the locks, examined the windows. Satisfied, they left her alone. "We'll be nearby if you need anything," Sung-ho said, "but we won't disturb you unless there's a threat." After they left, Hana stood in the center of her small space and just breathed. This was hers. Not beautiful, not luxurious, but earned through her own work. filled with her own choices. The books she'd selected, the clothes she'd bought, the tea she preferred. Her regular phone had accumulated dozens of messages during her absence. Her coworker Junho checking if she was okay. The coffee shop manager asking when she'd return. Several spam messages. And one from an unknown number that made her pause. This is CEO Jae-hyuk. I want to apologize again for my behavior at the Velvet Room. I'm attending counseling to address my drinking and anger issues. I hope you're well. You don't need to respond to this message. Hana stared at the text for a long moment. Jae-hyuk, the man who'd hit her, who'd set this whole chain of events in motion, was in counseling? Because of what Woo-jin had done? She didn't know whether to feel satisfied or unsettled. She was still staring at her phone when the secure phone Woo-jin had given her rang. Are you settled in? His voice was quieter than usual, almost tentative. I'm home. It feels strange, like I've been gone for months instead of days. That's normal after high stress. Your perception of time gets distorted. Speaking from experience? Unfortunately, yes. Hana, can we meet tomorrow? Somewhere neutral, just to talk about what happens next. I thought you said I was free to decide on my own, that you'd respect whatever boundaries I set. I will, but I'd like to have the conversation in person if you're willing. No pressure, no manipulation, just two people discussing the reality of a complicated situation. Hana sat on her mattress, pulling her knees to her chest. Part of her wanted to say no, to cut all ties with Woo-jin and his dangerous world. But another part, a part she was still trying to understand, wanted answers to questions she hadn't yet formed. The bookstore, Arkan Book, tomorrow at 2. I'll be there. Thank you, Hana. After hanging up, she lay back on her familiar mattress and stared at her familiar ceiling, trying to sort through the tangle of feelings in her chest. Fear, definitely. Gratitude, reluctantly. But also something else, something that felt dangerously close to curiosity about the man who'd spent 8 years building an empire, partially because she'd once shown him kindness. That night, Hana dreamed of the alley. Rain pouring down, blood mixing with water in the gutter, a young man's face pale with blood loss and fear. In the dream, she bandaged his wounds and shared her food just like she had in reality. But when he stood to leave, Dream Hana asked the question real Hana hadn't thought to ask. What will you become? Dream Woo-jin looked back at her, his eyes older than his years. Whatever I need to be to survive, and then if I'm lucky, something more. Will you be someone good? I'll be someone who remembers your kindness. Maybe that's the same thing. She woke at dawn, the dream fading but leaving an odd sense of melancholy. Had she created this version of Woo-jin? Had her one act of kindness shaped him in ways she hadn't intended and couldn't control? The thought was heavy, complicated. She'd always believed kindness was inherently good, that helping others was the right choice, regardless of consequences. But what if kindness had consequences you couldn't predict? What if saving someone's life meant they'd spend years building the power to save yours in return, even if that power came from morally questionable sources? Hana got up and made tea, sitting at her small table and watching Seoul wake up through her window. The city didn't care about her philosophical dilemmas. It just kept moving, millions of people pursuing their own complicated lives. Her regular phone buzzed, a text from the Velvet Room manager. We'd love to have you back whenever you're ready. Your position is waiting. 25,000 won per hour. The raised wage Woo-jin had somehow arranged. Money that would make her life significantly easier, but money that felt tainted by how it had been obtained. Another text, this one from the coffee shop. Hope your family emergency is resolved. We miss you. Come back soon. 2 jobs wanting her back. A third, the convenience store, where she'd probably be welcome too. She could return to her normal life, working 3 jobs to stay afloat, struggling but independent. Or she could accept Woo-jin's help, finish nursing school, build an actual career instead of just surviving. But accepting that help meant accepting money earned through illegal operations. meant staying connected to someone dangerous, meant compromising principles she'd held her entire life. There was no easy answer. Her grandmother had been right. The hardest choices were between two goods or two evils, not between good and evil. This was one of those impossible choices where every path had merit and cost. Woo-jin spent the morning preparing for the afternoon meeting the way someone might prepare for a critical negotiation, which, in a sense, it was. The negotiation for whether Hana would remain in his life in any capacity. "You're nervous," Min-seo observed, watching him change his shirt for the third time. "I'm not nervous. You've changed clothes 3 times. You've rehearsed what you're going to say at least twice that I've heard. You're definitely nervous." Woo-jin gave up on pretending. "This matters. More than most things matter. I need to get it right." "So, be honest with her. That's what she seems to value most. Not the money or the protection or the manipulation. Just honest communication about what you want and why." "What I want is complicated. Is it? Or are you making it complicated because acknowledging what you actually want feels vulnerable?" Woo-jin looked at his assistant, this woman who'd worked for him for 5 years and had apparently developed the ability to read him better than he read himself. "What do you think I want?" Min-seo smiled slightly. "I think you want Hana in your life, not as an obligation or a debt repayment, but as someone who matters personally. I think you've been half in love with the idea of her for 8 years, and now that you've met the real person, you're terrified she'll want nothing to do with you." The accuracy of that statement hit like a physical blow. Woo-jin had spent years maintaining emotional distance from everyone, treating relationships as transactional, never letting anyone close enough to hurt him. But Hana had somehow bypassed all those defenses without even trying, simply by being kind to a bleeding stranger a lifetime ago. What if she does want nothing to do with me? What if I've done all of this, become all of this, and she walks away? Then you let her walk away, because forcing her to stay would make you exactly the kind of person she'd be right to fear. That's surprisingly wise. I read a lot of self-help books. They're surprisingly applicable to managing a criminal organization. At 1:30, Woo-jin headed to Ark and Book. He arrived early again, securing the same corner alcove on the 3rd floor. The bookstore was quiet on a weekday afternoon, just a few students studying and a couple browsing the art book section. Hana arrived exactly on time, and Woo-jin felt his breath catch slightly. She looked tired but determined, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back practically. Beautiful in an understated way that had nothing to do with makeup or styling and everything to do with the strength visible in her bearing. She sat across from him, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. Two people whose lives had intersected in the most unlikely way, trying to figure out what that intersection meant. "Thank you for coming," Woo-jin said. "You said we needed to talk about what happens next. So let's talk." "Okay, let me start by asking what you want. Not what you think I want to hear, but what you actually want for your life going forward." Hana considered the question carefully. "I want to finish nursing school. I want my grandmother to get better. I want to stop being so exhausted all the time that I can barely think. I want to feel safe in my own life without needing constant protection. I want to make choices that are actually mine, not dictated by financial desperation or threat of violence." Those are all reasonable wants. I can help with most of them. I know you can. That's the problem. Because accepting your help means accepting everything that comes with it. Your money, your protection, your world, and I don't know if I can do that. What if I could help without those strings? What if I could arrange things so you got what you needed without feeling obligated or compromised? How? Everything you have comes from your operations. There's no way to separate the help from its source. Woo-jin pulled out a folder he'd prepared. This is a trust fund, 10 million won, invested in completely legitimate securities. The fund is set up to pay your tuition at any accredited nursing program, cover your grandmother's medical expenses for the next 5 years, and provide you with a modest living stipend. The money is legally clean, taxed properly, traceable to legitimate sources. Hana stared at the folder without taking it. Where did this money actually come from? Originally? Yes, it came from my operations, but it's been laundered through enough legitimate business transactions over the past few years that it's legally clean. A forensic accountant couldn't trace it back to anything criminal. You could accept this money with a clear conscience. Except I'd still know the truth. I'd know that somewhere in its history, this money was earned through illegal means. Hana, almost every fortune in existence has something questionable in its history. The difference between new money and old money is just how many generations have passed since the questionable part. I'm offering you a way out of the struggle you've been trapped in. Does it really matter how the money was originally earned if it's being used for something good now? She looked at him steadily. That's a very convenient philosophy for someone in your position. It's a practical philosophy for someone who lives in the real world. Nothing is perfectly clean, Hana. Everything is compromise and gray areas. The question is whether you can live with the specific compromises required. And what compromises are you asking for? None. That's what I'm trying to explain. Take the trust fund, use it to build the life you want, and owe me nothing. No obligations, no expectations, no strings attached. There are always strings attached. Maybe not formal ones, but emotional ones. If I accept this, I'm accepting help from you. That creates a bond, a connection, and connections to people in your world are dangerous. They can be, but they can also be valuable. The question is whether the value outweighs the risk. Hana stood abruptly and walked to the window, looking out at the traditional rooftops. Woo-jin stayed seated, giving her space to think. Tell me honestly, she said without turning around. What do you want from me? Not what you're offering me, but what you actually want. Woo-jin considered lying, offering some sanitized version that would be easier for both of them. But Min Seo had been right. Hana valued honesty above almost everything else. I want you in my life, he said quietly. Not as an obligation or a debt repayment, but as someone who matters. Someone whose company I value, whose perspective I respect, whose presence makes me believe I might be more than just someone who survives through force and manipulation. She turned to look at him, surprise visible on her face. You barely know me. I've been watching over you for 8 years. I know you work harder than anyone should have to. I know you sacrifice your own needs for your grandmother without complaint. I know you stop to help old people carry groceries upstairs even when you're exhausted. I know you tip delivery drivers more than you can afford because you understand how hard their job is. I know you're kind and strong and stubborn and exactly the kind of person I wish I could be more like. That's not knowing someone, that's observing them from a distance. You're right, which is why I'm asking for a chance to actually know you. Not as your protector or benefactor, but as something else. I don't even know what to call it. A friend, maybe? Someone you grab coffee with occasionally. Someone you complain to about annoying professors when you're back in school. Someone who exists in your life without controlling it. Hana walked back to the table and sat down, studying him with an intensity that made Woo-jin feel exposed in a way he rarely experienced. You realize how complicated that would be? Being friends with someone who runs criminal operations while I'm trying to be a nurse, trying to help people legally and ethically? I realize, but complicated doesn't mean impossible. What happens when you do something terrible? When you hurt someone or destroy someone's life as part of your business? Do I just ignore that because we're friends? Do I pretend not to know? I don't have a good answer for that. I can tell you that I have lines I don't cross. No drugs, no human trafficking, no harming innocents. But yes, I do things that would horrify most people. If you can't accept that reality, then friendship probably isn't possible. Why would you even want to be friends with someone who can't fully accept what you do? Because you represent something I lost a long time ago. The belief that there's more to life than survival and power. That kindness matters. That people can be good without it being a manipulation. I need that reminder, Hana. I need someone in my life who challenges me to be better instead of just more effective. They sat in silence for a long moment. Around them, the bookstore continued its quiet rhythm. People, browsing and reading, completely unaware of the strange negotiation happening in the corner alcove. I need time, Hana said finally. Time to think about all of this without pressure or immediate crisis. Time to figure out who I am when I'm not drowning in bills and exhaustion. Can you give me that? How much time? I don't know. Weeks, maybe months. But real time where you're not watching over me or manipulating situations or interfering. Real space to make my own decisions. Woo-jin felt something clench in his chest. Weeks or months of not knowing if she'd ultimately walk away. Of giving up the control he'd carefully maintained for 8 years. Of trusting that if he let her go, she might choose to come back. It was terrifying. It was also the right thing to do. Okay, he said. I'll give you space. The trust fund will be available if you want it. No strings attached. The security detail will back off unless you specifically request it. And I won't contact you unless you contact me first. Really? You'd actually do that? Yes, because what you said earlier was right. If I truly care about your well-being and your freedom, then I need to let you exercise that freedom, even if it means losing you. Hana looked at him for a long moment, and Woo-jin saw something shift in her expression. Not quite trust, but maybe the beginning of it. The recognition that he was capable of putting her needs above his own wants. Thank you, she said quietly. That means more than you probably realize. One request, though. If you decide you want nothing to do with me, with any of this, tell me directly. Don't just disappear. Give me the closure of knowing your decision. I can do that. She stood to leave, then paused. Woo-jin? For what it's worth, I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're someone who's done bad things to survive in a bad world. And I think you're trying to be better than that world usually allows. That's something. After she left, Woo-jin sat alone in the bookstore for a long time, staring at the folder containing the trust fund information that she'd left on the table. She hadn't taken it, hadn't rejected it either, just left it there as a question mark, an undecided possibility. Minseo had been right. He was half in love with the idea of Hana, and now that he'd met the real person, he was completely terrified she'd walk away. But he'd made a promise. He'd give her space, let her decide, and respect whatever choice she made, even if it broke something in him that had only recently begun to heal. 3 months passed. 3 months of Hana, living her life without Woo-jin's visible presence. She returned to her jobs, though she eventually quit the convenience store when the coffee shop offered her more hours at better pay. She visited her grandmother 3 times a week, watching with relief as the old woman's health stabilized. She researched nursing programs, comparing costs and requirements, dreaming of a future that might actually be possible. The trust fund folder sat in her apartment, unopened but not forgotten. Some days she'd pick it up, run her fingers over the embossed logo, consider what accepting it would mean. Other days, she'd shove it in a drawer and try to forget it existed. Woo-jin kept his promise. No surveillance teams that she could detect. No mysterious interventions. No contact beyond a single text he'd sent 2 weeks after their bookstore meeting. I hope you're well. I'm here if you need anything. Jay? She hadn't responded. Wasn't sure what to say, but she thought about him more than she'd expected to. Wondered what he was doing, whether his world had continued without her in it, whether he thought about her too. Late at night, when insomnia kept her staring at her water-stained ceiling, she'd pull up news articles on her phone, searching for any mention of criminal activity that might be connected to him. She found nothing. Either he was better at staying invisible than she'd realized, or he'd scaled back his operations. She suspected the former. Her grandmother noticed the change in her, the distraction, the way Hana sometimes seemed to be somewhere else mentally, even when physically present. "You're thinking about that dangerous person who helped us," her grandmother said one afternoon, her tone matter of fact. "The one you won't tell me about." "How did you know?" "Because I was young once too. I know what it looks like when someone is trying to decide whether to let someone into their heart or keep them locked out for safety." "It's not about my heart. It's about practical considerations, safety, morality, the kind of life I want to live." Those are all manifestations of what your heart is trying to protect. The question isn't whether this person is safe or moral by conventional standards. The question is whether knowing them makes your life richer or poorer, whether their presence adds something valuable or only subtracts through worry and compromise. And how do you figure that out? You imagine your life without them completely. Really imagine it, not just the safe parts, but the empty parts too. And then you ask yourself which emptiness you'd rather live with: the emptiness of their absence, or the emptiness of never knowing what might have been. The conversation stayed with Hana long after she left the hospital. She tried the exercise her grandmother suggested, imagining her life without any connection to Woo-jin. Never seeing him again, never knowing how his story continued, never understanding what he might have become beyond the bleeding stranger in an alley. The imagined absence felt surprisingly hollow, which terrified her because it suggested she'd already let him matter more than was wise. Woo-jin spent the same 3 months trying to respect Hana's need for space while fighting every instinct that told him to check on her, to make sure she was okay, to solve any problems she might be facing. "You're miserable," Min-seo observed one afternoon, finding him staring at his computer screen without actually seeing anything on it. "I'm fine. You're staring at blank spreadsheets and pretending to work. That's not fine." "I'm giving her space like I promised. That's what she needs." What she needs and what you need might not be the same thing. Have you considered that maybe she's waiting for you to reach out? That 3 months of complete silence might feel less like respect and more like abandonment? She said she needed time to think without pressure. Time to think doesn't necessarily mean time without any contact. It just means time without manipulation or control. You could reach out, see how she's doing without violating your promise. Or I could give her the space she asked for and trust that if she wants contact, she'll initiate it. "You're scared," Min-seo said bluntly. "You're scared that if you reach out, she'll reject you, so you're hiding behind your promise as an excuse not to risk it." Woo-jin wanted to argue, but the accusation was too accurate to deny. Yes, he was scared. Terrified, actually. Hana had the power to hurt him in ways no rival or enemy ever could, simply by deciding he wasn't worth the complications he brought. "What if she's happier without me?" he said quietly. "What if these 3 months have shown her that she doesn't need me or want me in her life? Then at least you'll know, and you can stop this limbo of waiting and wondering and actually move forward." "Forward to what?" "I don't know. That's something you'll have to figure out. But this suspended animation where you're not actually living, just existing and waiting, this isn't sustainable." That conversation planted a seed. Over the next week, Woo-jin found himself composing and deleting text messages to Hana. Simple things. "How are you?" "Hope you're well." "Thought of you today." But each message felt either too casual or too intense, too presumptuous or too distant. Finally, he settled on something simple and sent it before he could overthink. "There's a new art exhibition at the Seoul Museum of Art. I remembered you mentioned liking modern art. Thought you might enjoy it, no pressure to respond." He hit send and immediately regretted it. Too casual? Too stalker-ish that he remembered a random comment? Too transparent in its attempt to find common ground? 3 hours later, his phone buzzed with a response. "I didn't know you liked art." Woo-jin stared at the message, reading meaning into every word choice. She'd responded. That was something. The tone was neutral, neither welcoming nor rejecting. and she'd implied curiosity about him, which suggested, what exactly? He typed back, I don't know much about it, but I'm trying to learn. Expanding horizons and all that. That's very self-improvement of you. Trying to be someone worthy of second chances. A longer pause before her response came. Are you asking for a second chance? Woo-jin's hands hovered over his phone. This was it. The moment where he had to be honest about what he wanted, risk rejection, stop hiding behind noble promises about giving her space. I'm asking if there's any possibility of one. I know I complicated your life. I know my world is dangerous and morally compromised, but I also think there might be something valuable in the connection we have, if you're willing to explore it carefully. No pressure, just possibility. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Woo-jin was starting to think he'd pushed too hard when his phone finally buzzed. The exhibition closes next week, Saturday at 3? Relief flooded through him so intensely it was almost painful. Saturday at 3. I'll meet you there. Woo-jin? Yes? This isn't me deciding anything definitive. This is just me exploring that possibility you mentioned. Carefully. Understood. Thank you, Hana. After the exchange ended, Woo-jin allowed himself a small smile. It wasn't resolution, wasn't certainty, but it was movement. After 3 months of suspended animation, they were moving towards something, even if neither of them knew exactly what. Saturday arrived with cold clarity, one of those winter days where the sky was painfully blue and the air bit at exposed skin. Hana stood outside the Seoul Museum of Art, early as always, watching people stream in and out. Families with children, couples holding hands, students with sketchbooks, normal people living normal lives. She'd changed her outfit 3 times that morning, finally settling on jeans, boots, and a warm sweater under her coat. Not too formal, not too casual. The outfit of someone who wasn't trying too hard but had definitely tried. At precisely 3 p.m., Woo-jin arrived. He wore dark jeans and a charcoal coat, looking almost normal except for the controlled way he moved, the constant awareness of his surroundings that marked him as someone who lived in a dangerous world. Hi, he said, and the simplicity of it made Hana smile despite her nerves. Hi. They stood there awkwardly for a moment. 2 people who'd had the most intense and unusual introduction possible, now trying to figure out how to have a normal interaction. Should we go in? Woo-jin gestured toward the entrance. Yes, before we freeze to death out here. The exhibition was on contemporary Korean artists exploring themes of identity and transformation. Huge canvases with bold colors, installations made from unexpected materials, video art that played with time and perception. They walked through slowly, sometimes commenting on pieces, sometimes just existing in companionable silence. At one installation, a room filled with mirrors and lights that fractured and multiplied their reflections infinitely, Hana paused. What do you see? She asked. Woo-jin studied their multiplied images. Too many versions of myself. All slightly different angles, but none of them complete. You? The same, like we're all just fragments trying to convince the world we're whole. They moved on, and Hana found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the visit. This was nice, simple, the kind of thing normal people did on Saturday afternoons. No danger, no manipulation, just 2 people looking at art and occasionally sharing thoughts. In front of a painting that showed a figure split between darkness and light, Woo-jin spoke quietly. I've been thinking about what you said, about me being someone who's done bad things to survive in a bad world. I remember. You were kind in your assessment, more kind than I deserved. The truth is, I've done terrible things, not just to survive, but because I was angry at the world that had taken everything from me. I used my pain as permission to hurt others. Past tense? Trying to make it past tense. That night, you helped me. You said I seemed like someone who could be more than what I was. I've spent 8 years proving that right while simultaneously becoming exactly what you probably feared. Someone powerful and dangerous and morally compromised. The question I can't answer is whether being powerful enough to protect good people justifies the methods I use to gain that power. Hana looked at the painting, at the figure caught between light and dark. I don't think it's about justification. I think it's about recognition. Recognizing what you've done, understanding its cost, and making conscious choices about who you want to be going forward. And if who I want to be is still incompatible with who you want in your life, then we figure that out together, not through me judging you from a distance, but through honest conversation about boundaries and compromises. She turned to face him. I've spent 3 months thinking about what my grandmother said, about imagining my life without you in it and deciding which emptiness I'd rather live with. And I realized that completely cutting you out would mean never knowing if there was something valuable here, never understanding the person you became because of one night in an alley, never seeing if someone from your world and someone from mine could build something that doesn't require one of us to completely compromise who we are. That sounds complicated and probably impossible. Probably, but I'm willing to try if you are, with conditions. Name them. First, no more surveillance unless I specifically ask for it. No invisible protection, no monitoring, no interventions unless I request help. I need to know my life is actually mine. Agreed. Though I reserve the right to intervene if there's a genuine threat you're not aware of. Fair. Second, you're honest with me about your operations. Not details that would make me complicit, but general truth about what you do. I can't be friends with someone whose life is completely mysterious. That's reasonable, though there will be things I can't tell you for your own safety. I understand. Third, you actively try to be better. Not perfect, not suddenly legitimate, but consciously working toward being someone who uses power responsibly rather than just ruthlessly. I'm already trying, but I'll try harder. And fourth, we go slow, really slow. Build trust gradually instead of assuming the intensity of our origin story means we should skip normal relationship development steps. Relationship? Woo-jin's expression was carefully neutral, but Hana saw hope flicker in his eyes. Friendship first. Maybe something more eventually if we both decide that's what we want. But friendship is the foundation. Can you accept that? I can accept anything that means you're willing to have me in your life. They continued through the exhibition, and something between them had shifted. Not resolved, but opened. A door that had been closed was now slightly ajar, letting possibility seep through. At the museum cafe afterward, over coffee, Woo-jin told her about his legitimate businesses, the restaurants he was actually proud of, the community center he'd quietly funded in a neighborhood where he'd grown up. Hana told him about the nursing programs she was considering, her fear of being too old to start over, her dream of working in emergency medicine. I've been thinking about the trust fund, she said eventually. You don't have to decide. I want to accept it, but with modifications. What kind of modifications? I want it structured as a loan. Low interest, long repayment term, but a loan. That way it's help, not charity. I can accept help. Charity makes me feel compromised. Woo-jin smiled. That's very you. Accepting help but only on terms that preserve your independence. Is that insulting? No, it's one of the things I admire most about you. Your refusal to be saved only helped. Your insistence on agency even when circumstances try to strip it away. Then you'll agree to the loan structure? I'll have Min Seo draw up documents, whatever terms make you comfortable. They talked for another hour, about small things mostly. Her grandmother's progress, his frustration with a restaurant manager, her coworker Junho's terrible taste in television dramas. Normal conversation between two people getting to know each other. When they finally parted ways outside the museum, Hana surprised herself by hugging him. Just briefly, just a simple gesture of connection, but the first physical contact between them beyond handshakes. Thank you, she said, for giving me space, for respecting my boundaries, for being someone I can consider letting into my life. Thank you for giving me a second chance. I won't waste it. Walking home, Hana felt lighter than she had in months. This was still complicated. Woo-jin was still dangerous, still morally compromised, still someone who existed in a world she fundamentally disagreed with. But he was also someone trying to be better, someone whose life had been shaped by her kindness, someone who might become a genuine friend if they both worked at it. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, uncertain felt like possibility rather than threat. 6 months later, Hana sat in a lecture hall at Seoul National University, taking notes on emergency triage protocols. She'd started nursing school in the spring semester, her tuition and expenses covered by the loan from Woo-jin's trust fund. She was older than most of her classmates, but that just meant she asked better questions and appreciated the opportunity more. Her grandmother had been discharged from the hospital 2 months earlier, her condition stable enough for home care. They'd moved to a larger apartment, nothing fancy but with proper heating and windows that didn't rattle. Hana visited her every evening, cooking dinner and helping with exercises. Her phone buzzed with a text. Woo-jin, dinner tonight? There's a new Vietnamese place in Itaewon I think you'd like. She smiled and typed back. Can't. Study group until 9. Tomorrow? Tomorrow works. Good luck with studying. Their friendship had developed slowly, carefully, exactly as Hana had insisted. Dinner once a week, occasional museum visits, long conversations about everything from philosophy to favorite foods. Woo-jin had kept his promise to be more transparent, telling her in general terms about his work while sparing her details that would make her complicit. She'd learned that he was genuinely trying to shift his operations toward more legitimate enterprises, moving away from protection rackets toward actual security services, using his information network for due diligence rather than blackmail. It was slow, complicated by the nature of his world, but movement in the right direction. She'd also learned that he was funny, in a dry, unexpected way. That he read voraciously, everything from philosophy to crime fiction. That he visited the same noodle shop every Tuesday because the elderly owner reminded him of his mother. That he was terrified of dogs despite his fearsome reputation. That he cried during sad movies but would deny it vehemently. In short, she'd learned that Woo-jin was human, complicated, flawed, trying his best in a world that didn't make it easy to be good. After class, Hana checked her other messages. One from her study group confirming the evening session. One from her grandmother asking her to pick up more of the herbal tea she liked, and one from the hospital where she was doing her clinical rotation. Congratulations, you've been selected for the emergency medicine track. Details to follow. Emergency medicine. Her dream. The goal she thought she'd lost forever, now within reach. She felt tears prick her eyes. Not sad tears, but the overwhelmed kind that came from too much good fortune, after too much struggle. A year ago, she'd been drowning in debt and despair, working 3 jobs and watching her grandmother die slowly, with no hope of anything better. Now she had a future, an actual future with possibilities and dreams and the education to pursue them. She pulled out her phone and called Woo-jin, not texting but actually calling. Hana, everything okay? Everything's perfect. I got accepted into the emergency medicine track. She could hear the smile in his voice. That's incredible. I'm so proud of you. I wanted to thank you. I know we structured it as a loan, but we both know that without your help, this wouldn't be happening. So thank you, Woo-jin, for everything. You did this yourself. I just removed some obstacles. You did more than that. You gave me the chance to become who I was supposed to be. That matters. A pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter. You gave me that same chance once, in an alley, in the rain, when you had no reason to help and every reason to walk away. We're even, Hana, more than even. I don't think we are. I gave you first aid and a sandwich. You gave me back my future. You gave me a reason to build a future worth having. That's worth more than you realize. After hanging up, Hana sat in the lecture hall, looking at the empty seats around her, thinking about the strange path that had led her here. A random act of kindness 8 years ago had somehow resulted in this moment, this opportunity, this friendship with someone who existed in a world she'd never wanted to touch. Life was weird, complicated, full of connections and consequences that rippled out in ways you couldn't predict. But sometimes, if you were lucky, those ripples led somewhere good. 2 years later, Hana walked through the emergency department where she now worked as a newly certified nurse. It was chaotic and exhausting and exactly what she'd always wanted. She triaged patients, assisted with procedures, saved lives in small and large ways. Her grandmother had passed away 6 months earlier, peacefully in her sleep, her last years made comfortable by the treatment she'd received. Hana mourned, but also felt grateful that she'd had that time, that her grandmother had died cared for rather than in pain and poverty. Woo-jin had attended the funeral, sitting in the back, never imposing but present. Their friendship had deepened over 2 years into something Hana still couldn't quite name. More than friends, not quite romantic, a connection that defied easy categorization. He was changing, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. His operations had shifted toward legitimate business, though he maintained enough edge to navigate his world safely. He'd started a foundation that funded education for kids from difficult backgrounds, seeing himself in every struggling teenager who needed a chance. And he still carried her student ID in his wallet, a reminder of where he'd started and why he kept trying to be better. One evening, after a particularly difficult shift, Hana found Woo-jin waiting outside the hospital with coffee and pastries from her favorite bakery. "Rough day?" he asked, noting her exhaustion. "Lost a patient. Car accident. He was 18, whole life ahead of him. We tried everything, but sometimes everything isn't enough." They walked to a nearby park and sat on a bench, watching the city move around them. Hana leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture that had become natural over time. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, "about that night in the alley, about what would have happened if I'd walked past you, if I'd been too scared or too smart to help. You wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here, at least not in any form worth being. But also, we wouldn't have this. Whatever this is, this strange, complicated, shouldn't work but does thing we've built. Are you regretting it?" "No, I'm grateful for it. I'm just wondering if you ever think about all the alternate paths our lives could have taken if that one moment had gone differently." "I think about it constantly, but then I remember that we did get this path, and despite everything, all the complications and dangers and moral quandaries, I wouldn't trade it." "Neither would I." They sat in comfortable silence, two people whose lives had intersected in the most unlikely way, and had somehow built something real from that intersection. Not perfect, not simple, but genuine and worth fighting for. Woo-jin pulled something from his pocket. A small box, wrapped simply. "I got you something. For surviving your first 6 months as an ER nurse." Inside was a necklace, simple and elegant. A small pendant shaped like a medical alert symbol, but on the back was an engraving. "You saved me first." Hana felt tears prick her eyes. "Woo-jin, this is a reminder that the person I've become, good and bad, started with your kindness, that I'm still trying to be worthy of that moment, and that no matter what happens, you'll always be the person who taught me that kindness exists, even in dark places." She put the necklace on, and it settled against her collarbone, a weight both physical and symbolic. "You know," she said, wiping her eyes, "when I was 18, crying in an alley because I'd lost my student ID, I never imagined that ID would end up in the wallet of someone who'd build an empire partially to repay me for a sandwich and some first aid. And when I was bleeding out in that alley, I never imagined the girl who helped me would become the most important person in my life. But here we are." "Here we are," she echoed. They stayed in the park as evening darkened into night, Seoul's lights coming alive around them. Two people who shouldn't have found each other but did, who shouldn't have worked but somehow managed, who'd taken one moment of unexpected kindness and built an entire relationship from its foundation. The future was still uncertain. Woo-jin's world was still dangerous. Hana's principles were still sometimes at odds with his reality. But they'd figured out how to navigate those complications together, with honesty and respect, and the kind of deep trust that only came from seeing someone at their worst and choosing them anyway. As they finally stood to leave, Woo-jin took her hand. Not possessively, not desperately, just naturally. A simple gesture of connection between two people who'd saved each other in different ways at different times. "Thank you," he said, "for that night in the alley, for giving me space when I needed it, for giving me a chance when you didn't have to, for being someone worth becoming better for. Thank you for respecting my choices, for being patient with my boundaries, for showing me that people can change if they really try, for being my friend, and maybe something more, in your own complicated way. Maybe something more?" His expression was carefully hopeful. "Maybe. Someday, when we're both ready. No rush." "No rush," he agreed. "We've got time." And walking through Seoul streets together, neither quite friend nor quite lover, but something uniquely theirs, Hana realized that sometimes the best stories were the ones that didn't fit into neat categories. The ones that started with rain and blood, and a choice to help someone when you didn't have to. 8 years ago, she'd saved a stranger's life. In return, he'd spent those years building the power to save hers. Now, finally, they were both free to simply live, connected by choice rather than debt, by genuine affection rather than obligation. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was real and messy and earned through struggle and compromise, and the kind of honesty that only comes from seeing each other completely. And somehow, that made it perfect enough.